Hello, poem coaxers. My name is Amy Ludwig VanDerwater, and I am meeting you today from the Poem Farm, which is where I live in this little tiny shed that I write in called Gratitude. She is yellow and stuffed with books and puppets and things. So I'm very happy to have you here with me today for our very first little session of coaxing poems. And some of you might have been wondering, what does the word coaxing mean? And I looked it up to give the best definition, and Merriam-Webster defines coax as to influence or gently urge. And when we write poems, because poetry can be a quiet genre, it's not like barging in there, it can help us to settle ourselves down so that we can be gentle and invite the poems inside of us to come out. I wanted to start with a poem from my book, Write, 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 which is actually exactly about this. And I had kind of forgotten about it when I thought of doing this little series of classes. And the poem is called Patience. Here, poem, I wiggle my fingers. Gently I whisper, my shy poem lingers. It hesitates, tilting its head to one side. It's trying to trust me with eyes open wide. Here, poem, I do want to hold it, to snuggle its words, and then I will fold it into my notebook. I try to be still. My poem will come to me. I know it will. Here, poem, I wait for so long, singing a soft, smitten poem love song. I sit like a pretzel to offer my lap. My poem seems sleepy. Perhaps it will nap. Oh, poem, at last you are here. You breathe with a rhythm I drink with my ear. I listen as you snore a story in rhyme. A poem needs patience. I must give you time. And so this is a poem that I wrote to a poem that didn't exist yet. And I like to think of, we live here out in the country, and sometimes we find kittens that are homeless, and we have adopted many of them. And when a kitten hasn't had a home for a while, it's sometimes really scared, and you have to be with it and be still and be kind to it and not hurry it. And poetry is like that too. So over these times that we write together, what I will be doing is offering open space for you to write the poems and find the poems and invite the poems that already are inside of you. And today we're going to talk about just finding what those might be. And you may choose to shape some poems from what we do today, or maybe you'll shape something else. I don't know. So many times people say that each person is like a library. So we'll call today's little session Coaxing Poems. We are libraries. And I want to offer you two ways today to find ideas thinking about a library as our metaphor, or as what we're going to compare finding poems inside of ourselves to a library. So the first way is to imagine all of inside of you is filled with books. So you don't have a heart and a liver and guts and all that. Instead, you just have shelves and shelves and shelves and shelves of books. And each book is a different something that you know something about, or think something about, or wonder about, or curious about. So there may be a book about a place you've been, or a person you know, or a game that you like to play, or a treasure that you have found. And I'm going to encourage you to think about these books as being not books that have to do with things that we plug in, things like video games and TV shows or movies or things like that, but rather things that don't require any electricity at all. So take a minute now. And I'll share with you. First, I'm going to give you a moment here, and you might wish to pause this video in a moment, because what I would do to do this would be to close my eyes and to imagine that inside of me is full of books. And I want to see all the titles. And I jotted down some of the titles of books that I imagined as being inside of me. And I jotted down, my grandmother had a fish named Goldie, a big, big goldfish. It got bigger and bigger and bigger. And there, I could have a whole little book about Goldie inside of me. Chocolate milk. I love chocolate milk. And I especially like the sludge that I leave at the bottom. I have a book about that. It's a short book, but a good book. A closet that was in the house where I used to live growing up, because I used to play in this closet a lot. And so I could imagine a book about that, and just write down. So I just wrote down my closet in our old home. I went there and made it a world. I pretended it was an elevator. And I just jotted down little notes about each of these books inside of me. How my cat Winnie runs up trees. She takes a big running leap and she's up at the top. I love to watch chipmunks crossing the road with their little tails. They look like little flags they're waving. And that could be a book inside of me. My friends, I have a lot of wonderful friends, and I could have a book for each of them or a book that really was just about my friends. And so any one of these offer me topics. So I'd like to give you a moment, and you may choose to pause the video to close your eyes, take a deep breath, and just imagine all different book titles inside of you. If you really were filled with shelves instead of bones and blood, what would those titles be? And then go ahead and take a moment to jot down. You may pause the video, and when I come back, I'm going to offer you a second idea. Okay, you're back. So you just took a moment to imagine yourself full of books, and now you have a handful, maybe 1, 2, 3, or more possible book titles that you could write about. Here's a second idea. Writing can be a little bit mysterious, and so one other way that we can access the library inside of us, we can go right to the shelves and look at the spines and choose the book that we want to write or the title that we wish to have our poem be about. Or we also can just pretend that the imaginary librarian inside of us is giving us a book. They're just giving us a title, giving us a subject without us having anything to do with it. But of course, it's already inside of us. And here's how I do this. This might seem a little strange, but writing can be a little bit strange and a little bit mysterious. And what I do is I just put my hands up like this. I can hold them far apart, or I can just have them like this with my palms turned up to the sky. And I can leave my eyes open, or I may close my eyes and think, again, a deep breath. And I imagine things just landing in my hands, ideas just landing in my hands by the imaginary librarian inside of the library, which is me. And I did this a little bit earlier, and I came up with all these things landed in my hands. One was a cloud landed in my hand, and I imagined having a cloud as a pet. A crackling fire. I love fires in the wintertime here in Western New York, and I wrote about, and what landed in my hand was the sound of a crackling fire. I had a great Aunt Kay, and she had this big brown coat, and she somehow landed in my hands. I didn't go find her in the stacks by looking intentionally, but I let her arrive by being still and holding up my hands. The idea of wearing a towel on my head. I used to put a towel on my head to pretend I had very long hair. That landed today in my hands. And books I haven't read yet. I have many books that I have read and many books that I haven't read. And so one thing that landed in my hand today, by surprise, invisibly, was the idea of a book I haven't read yet. So any of these could be an idea of a poem. So again, I'm going to give you a moment to pause the video, close your eyes, or leave them open if you prefer. Have your hands held palms up, and let ideas just arrive to you. Be surprised. They may be things you think about a lot. It might just be something a little quirky and odd, and that's also fine. Right. Now, you're back. And I would like to offer you time now to take one of the ideas that you had. I shared with you many of mine, and choose one that you would like to make a poem about. And all I'll say today about making a poem is this. It's short. It does not need to rhyme. In fact, during all these sessions, I will not be rhyming at all. I do rhyme a lot, but I won't be rhyming at all for our little visits together. So it's short. We're not rhyming. Lines are short. Maybe they're long. Maybe they alternate. That's about all. And I want to pick really good words. So I tend in poems not to write words like nice, great, awesome. Not bad to do that. I just tend to try and say, is there like a more perfect magical word that I could choose? And I did that. I took some of mine and I shaped them into poems. I'll read you a couple just so you can hear them and you'll be able to see them as well. But I told you what arrived in my hands was the idea of my great Aunt Kay. And I just wrote this very short poem, big and small. My great Aunt Kay wore a big brown coat, drove a big old car, and smelled like big fancy flowers. But she knitted me sweaters with small white buttons, painted with tiny kitty cats and fish. It's not a whole story. It's just a little nugget of a memory of my aunt. Hadn't thought about her in a while. Now suddenly she's back. Another one. I did a bunch, but I'm just going to read you one more. I'm not sure of the title of this one yet. I usually write titles at the end, but I'm playing still. For now, the title is On the Way to School. It looks like I'm sitting alone, but no one can see the puffy cloud sharing this seat with me. I never knew clouds were so soft and so kind. I hope he will ride the bus home. So, coaxing is gently urging. We want to be kind to our poems. You can wait for them. It helps to be still for a couple minutes. It does help me to close my eyes. It might not help you. You know best what helps you. But today, I'd like to leave you with the thought that we are all libraries, and inside of us are many books, imaginary books, metaphorical books, but they are there, that we can go to and pull one out at any moment to write about, or we may choose to let our imaginary librarian place a book in our hands, a topic in our hands, and see where it takes us. Do not make your poem rhyme. Don't worry about how long it is. You don't have to like your poem. I don't like all my poems at all, but I just keep at it. So I welcome your coaxing. It's lovely to be with you. Thank you for spending this time with me, and maybe I'll see you next week.